Good afternoon in the Netherlands and as well in Zambia. My name is Aurélien Laurent, and together with my colleague Namer Urbanova from the Coax Foundation, we'll be having a match which is a postponed match from day one, but it's as well the very last match of the group phase. In this group, the group F, where there are two teams who are debating today on a topic which is connected to environmental law and human rights. So before we move, of course, to the match, I give the floor to my colleague in order to introduce the match and the teams. So the floor is yours, Mr. Urbanova.
Thank you very much, Professor Lavage, and also good day to our participating teams and also to the three judges that will be reviewing or possibly are already watching this match live on YouTube. It is a pleasure to have with you the final match of the group phase today, by the day 1-1. So the Tilburg University debate team and University of Zambia's debate team will be debating on whether or not international law should recognize the right to biodiverse environment as fundamental human right, ensuring that the protection and preservation of biodiversity to support the well-being of all individuals. As always, before we start the debate itself, we'll allocate the positions, and even before that, for the introductions of the teams, starting with the University of Zambia, Mr. Gift.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Gift Kapala. I'm a third year student at the University of Zambia, and I'm looking forward to an amazing debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome for Tilburg University, Mr. Dejan Christoph.
Yes, hello and welcome. Good afternoon to everyone, and I'm very excited for this match, and I want to wish our opponents good luck.
Thank you. Welcome for University of Zambia, Mr. Musanda Teddy.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Badu Bisalom, fourth year law student at the University of Zambia, and looking forward to an amazing debate. Thank you.
Okay, welcome for Tilburg University, Ms. Danica Boytova.
Hi everyone, my name is Danica and I study global law at Tilburg. I'm first year and I'm really looking forward to having a debate with you this afternoon.
Thank you, welcome. And for University of Zambia, Mr. Banda Bisalom.
Thank you very much. Good day to everyone. My name is Musanda Teddy, and I'm a law student at the University of Zambia. I'm looking forward to an exciting debate and all the best to our opponents.
Okay, welcome. So I'll be passing the floor to my colleague in a short while as he's sharing his screen. Just a short reminder, a yellow card indicates 30 seconds left of the speaking time, and the red card indicates the speaking time is up. Mr. Watts, can you take it?
Yes, so now I will share my screen for the allocation of positions. So you will see in a few seconds the wheel. Yes, normally you should see the wheel with the double flags and logos of your respective institutions that you are presenting. For this match, the team will be in favor, will be starting the match with the first introduction. So for this match, Tilburg University will be in favor and will be starting with the first introduction. As a consequence, the University of Zambia will be against the motion. So it means concretely, Tilburg University will defend the position that international law should recognize the right to a biodiverse environment as a fundamental right, ensuring the protection and preservation of biodiversity to support the well-being of all individuals. While the University of Zambia will be defending the position that international law should not recognize the right to a biodiverse environment as a fundamental right, ensuring the protection and preservation of biodiversity to support the well-being of all individuals. So now you'll have 5 minutes to review your notes, and then we'll be starting with the introduction by the team from Tilburg. Voila. So we are done with the 5 minutes of preparation. So I stop sharing my screen. So we'll be hearing, of course, the introduction. Don't forget the yellow card and red card. We welcome as well Judge Aninat, who is in the room now, one of the 3 judges for this match. So, I give the floor to my colleague for starting the match.
Thank you very much. We'll now be hearing the opening statements, starting with the position in favor. You will have 4 minutes whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me first? I would like to confirm that.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Honorable judges and opposition. Today, we stand in support of the proposition that international law should recognize the right to a biodiverse environment as a fundamental human right. To substantiate our position, we will bring forward 2 arguments. First, we would like to highlight that the current framework is inadequate, and second, we would like to argue that the recognition of the right to a biodiverse environment is foundational for ensuring equity and justice globally. Through these 2 points, we would like to highlight the importance of recognizing the right to a biodiverse environment as the pillar of the healthy and equitable existence of humans on the planet Earth. For our first argument, we would like to say that the current framework of fundamental human rights is inadequate. Despite the recognized importance of clean, healthy, and sustainable environment for the full enjoyment of human rights, existing international law is failing to adapt to the urgent reality of biodiversity protection. Fundamental human rights are supposed to evolve according to humanity's pressing needs, which is why the Council of Europe has identified the right to a healthy environment as an emerging third-generation human right. Today, biodiversity has become so essential to our enjoyment of human rights that it stands as a right in its own regard, something which was unacknowledged back in the day when the framework was being established, simply because we had not yet recognized it as so important. Furthermore, the 2022 General Assembly resolution recognizing the human right to a healthy environment has underscored a critical global shift toward codifying environmental and biodiversity concerns within the human rights regime. States have already been taking action on domestic level to address the issue. One example is the Asiatic lions case from one state in India, where 20 people were convicted for poaching endangered animals, the Asiatic lions. Despite that, the absence of a unilateral recognized right to biodiversity prevents a more coordinated and direct effort. This was evident from the landmark case in Uganda, where the Netherlands had to rely on the right to life and family under the ECHR system in order to hold the major polluter, the oil company Shell, accountable for pollution, which is an environmental issue. This underscores how recognizing the right to a biodiverse environment as a distinct human right could ease judicial hurdles and promise global equity. Now, to further substantiate our position, we would like to bring forward a second argument. Recognizing biodiversity as a human right would ensure global justice and fairness. Biodiversity loss harms disproportionately economically vulnerable communities and countries. Per data from Princeton universities, the world's wealthiest nations engage in a practice which is known as exporting extinction. That means that they destroy 15 times more biodiversity internationally than they do domestically. Now, although 156 countries already recognize the right to a healthy environment in some form domestically, economic exploitation continues, and biodiversity continues to decline precisely because of that. Compensation mechanisms which have been created, such as the UN loss and damages funds, are unable to restore vital ecosystems which are essential for the development of countries. It is only through raising biodiversity to the status of a human right that we could transform how governments and businesses engage with nature and protect humans as well as our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now be hearing opening statement for the against position by University of Zambia. You two have 4 minutes.
Enough. Can I get confirmation that I'm out?
You are partially. I would kindly ask everyone to close their video feed, so only mine and this will stay on. This could help the bandwidth. Please try again.
Hello? Am I audible?
Almost.
Is it clear?
Please try again.
Am I clear enough? Am I clear enough?
Yes, you are. I will also close my video feed and I will turn it back on before the 30-second mark, if that's okay, just to make it a bit easier. All right, whenever
Okay, it's
you're
okay.
ready.
I'm audible, right?
Yes.
I start in 1, 2, 3. Dear learned judges, it is important from the very onset of this debate to provide and to state that there's a varying distinction between a human right and a fundamental human right. While a human right is as essential, but it can be derogated. It has limitations. For example, the right to movement can be exempted where one is serving a prison sentence. But a fundamental human right is so essential that it is non-derogable. It can never be exempted. For example, the right against slavery, the right against torture can never be exempted under any circumstances. Now, it is important to make this distinction because the preposition are simply positing that the right to a biodiverse environment should be so essential that it can never be compromised for any needs. Then it would mean that even cutting down one tree would constitute a violation. Well, on that wavelength, as opposition, we stand firm in arguing that the right to a biodiverse environment should not be recognized as a fundamental human right. And we provide 4 points. The first point is that we'll provide is that it is unrealistic and it will be an overburden on state. The second point is that human rights framework is not the right framework in order to protect our environment. The fourth point is due to the enforcement challenges, and the fifth one is at the risk of stifling economic development. To our first point, dear learned judges, yes, the right to health, food depends on our biodiversity environment, but that would mean that there can never be food, there can never be health if we do not interfere with our natural resources temporarily in order to provide for food. Our wildlife is a great source of food that benefits our health. We can never achieve health if we cannot. We can never achieve health if we cannot interfere with our natural resources temporarily. That would mean that states will be held liable for cutting down pieces of land in order to bring developmental facilities such as a healthcare facility. Development can never be achieved if we render the right to biodiverse environment so absolute that it can never be compromised. Now, we are not advocating for deforestation, for the extinction of wildlife, but all we're arguing is that there must be a balance. We need to compromise the right to environment in order to fulfill other human rights. For example, the General Statement number 2 and number 6 of 1982 on the right to life provided that the right to life should not be interpreted narrowly. It must mean the provision of adequate food. But food comes from our natural habitat, from our natural environment. So we see that the right to life that is essential for the well-being of humans can never be fulfilled if we do not ensure the utilization of natural resources. Dear learned judges, developed countries such as Netherlands, Russia, China, and America all developed because of the utilization of natural resources. Principle 3 of the Rio Declaration provides that the protection of our environment must be provided in tandem with the developmental policies of each state. So in as much as the protection of our environment is so essential, but making it absolute would be very unrealistic and would lead to an absurdity. Because any human being or the state would be held liable if they venture in food production. So that means that several sectors will be affected. The agricultural sector will be affected. Developmental sectors that contribute to the provision of adequate facilities such as healthcare systems, education facilities shall be affected if we render this an absolute right. Make no mistake, we agree that we need to protect our environment. That is why we have a plethora of environmental legislations. But making it so absolute that it can never be subject to an exemption or compromise would lead to unrealistic goals and would be an overburden on states. And international will then be rendered undesirous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have now heard the opening statements for both sides of the argument. We'll now proceed to the rebuttals. Starting with Tilburg University, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. We already heard an argument that human rights have inherent limitations. I would like to ask the honorable opposition, does the right to health have limitation? Because the right to health has been enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25. And now, one might ask, where is the connection exactly? Well, the connection is pretty self-evident. The right to a biodiverse environment is inherently connected to the right to health. Now, the right to human health in itself is very, very, very dependent on the right to biodiversity. It would be the same thing as to say we can have freedom of speech without having freedom to information. Therefore, we believe that inherently it is important to recognize it because it is of no limitation. You cannot limit that right. And according to the World Health Organization, human health relies on ecosystem services. Furthermore, we already heard an argument that that would bring a lot of burden on the state. But that is simply not true. And it actually is the complete opposite because, well, the lack of biodiversity brings a lot of burden on itself. For example, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity find out that degradation could cost trillions of dollars. Moreover, WHO estimates that biodiversity loss imposes an annual cost of $10 trillion. So, is it more cost effective for states to mitigate that 10 trillion loss? Or is it better for them to just keep getting that loss each and every year and then to argue that, well, we don't have the resources to implement it? So it's simply absurd to claim that it would burden the states too much because right now they're being overburdened by that issue as it is existing. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for the first rebuttal in the against position, University of Zambia, you two have 2 minutes.
Am I audible enough?
You are.
Good afternoon to the distinguished judges as well as the opposition from the opposing delegation. It is indeed that we concede to the fact that indeed biodiversity provides medicinal purposes, but it is indeed our quotation, members of the semi-session, that from the same biodiversity, that's where we get our medicines, vaccines, and a lot of medicinal materials, members of the semi-session. But imagine a society where we don't have or we don't utilize what we have in the biodiversity environment. Hence, it will mean that we won't have medicinal materials. It is to our contention that we're saying that indeed we need to utilize biodiversity environment. We need to utilize biodiversity environment for us to be able to sustain human life. Proceeding to my point, members of the semi-session, which borders on human rights, not human rights framework, not being the right forum for environmental or rather biodiversity environment protection. It is our contention, members of the semi-session, that indeed biodiversity environment needs to be protected. But it is our quotation that it shouldn't be protected under human rights, but rather environmental law. There are a number of legislations out there, members of the semi-session. For example, the Convention on Biological Diversity, Article 1, which specifically addresses issues on biodiversity issues. And it has two objectives, members of the semi-session. The first one being that it conserves biodiversity protection as well as substantial conservation, members of the semi-session. Going to my second point, members of the semi-session, which borders on the current laws being adequate enough to address matters that have to do with biodiversity. For example, the Paris Agreement, members of the semi-session, which deals with the issue of striking a balance between circumstantial utilization of biodiversity as well as environment. It is this contention that we are saying that indeed this must be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now be hearing the second rebuttal by Tilburg University. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Well, as we already heard the argument about lack of resources, the opposition keeps reiterating that argument, but there is actually a fundamental issue with that argument. It's a logical fallacy, and we'll explain why. First of all, we heard the argument that we won't have medicine if we focus on biodiversity, but nature's decline in itself would significantly undercut human health, to the point that it would lead to further environmental catastrophes and people would get sicker and sicker. So isn't it better to prevent the need for medicine by simply helping biodiversity to actually exist and to actually continue existing in a normal way? Furthermore, we heard the argument that by reducing development and agriculture, we won't have enough food. But that is simply not true. And the contrary is actually true, that if we continue to erode biodiversity, this will lead to lack of food. Because according to the WHO, there is an annual cost of $270 billion because of the reduction of key pollinators such as bees. Bees, which are essential to helping plants and other environmental actors to help us produce our food. So indeed, biodiversity imposes direct cost. The lack of biodiversity imposes direct cost on food, and food costs keep rising because of the lack of bees. So clearly, the arguments of the opposition are simply short-sighted. They keep referring to resources, they keep referring to the fact that we will stifle development, but development is already facing significant burdens because of the issues of biodiversity loss around the world. Therefore, we believe that these arguments simply hold no merit because they simply do not explain an adequate reason to not put biodiversity as a human right. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second rebuttal in the against position, University of Zambia, you do have 2 minutes.
Am I audible?
You are.
Thank you. I begin now. What we believe that is agreed has the preposition and opposition both sides. We do agree that biodiversity is essential for food production, and without it, it would suffer. Therefore, what we are simply positing is that we must strike a balance between these competing interests. Going the absolutism way, that would be achieved if we elevate the right to biodiverse environment as a fundamental human right, would not be tenable. Our other point that we want to bring into the fore is that the enforcement challenges that would be abound. There's a saying that a law is only as its enforcement goes. You can never enforce a human rights if we lack a clear definition, clear parameters that define it. And to buttress this point, the advisory opinion of the ICJ on the use and threat of nuclear weapons provided that in order for human rights to be properly enforced, states have the obligation in order to provide clear definition of what constitutes the right and what constitutes clear limitations. And this is why we have constant opinions and commentaries on human rights in order to provide clear definitions. But that is not the status quo with the right to biodiverse environment. We have no clear definition of what constitutes the right to a biodiverse environment. And this is provided, and the testament to this is Article 2 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We have no definition of what constitutes a biodiverse environment and what constitutes the right thereto. Therefore, if we recognize the right to a biodiverse environment and take a human rights approach, then it would mean that it would be hard to enforce it because we have no clear definition that set out these parameters. This would lead to legal ambiguity, judicial manipulation. We already posit that environmental law is best suited to handle environmental protection violations and not human rights. We have a plethora of conventions, the Paris Agreement, the United Nations Framework on Climate Change that ensure that the environment and biodiversity is protected without the need of taking a human rights approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard the rebuttals from both sides. We'll proceed to the conclusions. Tilburg University, for your conclusion, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Honorable judges, as protectors of justice and sustainability, we must ensure our global framework preserves biodiversity rather than allowing entire species to vanish under its outdated norms. Now, we heard a number of arguments from our opponents. Those arguments were, for example, that there should be a balance between biodiversity and other interests. There should be that biodiversity would stifle development, that there's an unclear definition, that there's legal ambiguity. And while we see some merit in those arguments, we believe that they are inherently flawed and they also are not contextually applicable. First of all, how can one strike a balance between competing interests in this case? What are the competing interests here? Human health and biodiversity are not competing interests, and neither are human food and biodiversity. Now, our arguments outline that the current framework is outdated, dysfunctional, and genuinely ineffective in dealing with the issue of biodiversity loss. We also outlined that the recognition of a right to a biodiverse environment will ensure equity and justice. Our position was closer to the heart of the current existential problems that are planet faces, and our arguments presented a more multidisciplinary approach. Now, judges, we address two main values of law as discipline, which are namely fairness and legitimacy. And we would like to ask this question: what is law without its ability to justly and effectively address the issues of today? We believe that law becomes merely a text. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For our conclusion, in the against position, University of Zambia, you two have 2 minutes.
I want to confirm if I'm audible enough.
You are.
Thank you. Now, before I proceed to my conclusion, we want to make it clear that our argument that there are competing interests are not unrealistic. Firstly, let us give a practical example. In order to have the right to health, we need to build hospitals. In order to build hospitals, we need to interfere with natural resources such as trees. And it is for this reason that we argue that there are indeed competing interests. Now, to conclude, we want to bring out the point that recognizing the protection of biodiversity as a fundamental right will actually lead to the stifling of economic interest. Now, we have to understand that if this is so, states will lose the ability to make trade-offs between conservation as well as development. For instance, a copper mine or an hydroelectric power station, or rather an hydroelectric dam would be closed simply because the court has held that this is contradicting the protection of biodiversity. Now, we have to firstly understand that we are not saying that biodiversity should, or the protection of biodiversity should be completely disregarded. What we're saying rather is that these interests are equally significant to our well-being and as such must be balanced. Unjustifiably and unwarrantedly prioritizing one interest over the other is completely unacceptable. It is for this reason that we are arguing that in spite of the fact that the protection of biodiversity is important, we must balance this with economic interests. For instance, if we go with the path that undermines economic interest, the state will be actually unable to enforce other rights, such as the right to health, because this is dependent on a state's available economic resources. And so the path that is being proposed by the proposing side is actually unrealistic and cannot be tenable. It is for these few but convincing points that we argue that it is not necessary to recognize the protection of biodiversity as a fundamental human right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. You can all now relax. You're no longer graded after this part. Your debate is concluded. Thank you very much. You can all also turn your cameras back on. Professor Aninat, as you are one of the 3 judges with us on the call, if that is all right with you, we'll do a short feedback session with the students. And then if you already have some feedback that you are willing or able to share with the students on the match, just to generalize at least, we'll pass the floor then to you. If that is right. So then let me just ask for the University of Zambia, Mr. Kapala, how was the debate, the topic? Were you perhaps already familiar with it before the debate?
Thank you very much. Well, the preparation was very interesting. One thing that I've always enjoyed during the competition is learning new concepts, because it is something that we don't really learn in our curriculum because it is just diverse. And so one thing that I always enjoy is learning new concepts. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. For Tilburg University, Mr. Christoph, how was the topic for you, and were you perhaps already familiar with it?
Yeah, the topic was interesting. A lot of different areas that intersect with this topic, and it makes it a little bit more nuanced and complex. But overall, I did feel that I learned a lot from preparing for it, and I would like to congratulate the opposing team for their performance.
Thank you. For University of Zambia, Mr. Bandabisilum, how was the debate, the match?
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the debate. It was quite insightful and about the topic. Well, we actually came across a lot of new topics and new concepts in the law and just out there, and we learned a lot. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. From Tilburg University, Ms. Boykova, how was the match, the debate?
The match, I think, went great, and I think the topic was quite interesting. We'd studied before about human rights, but never in relation to something which cannot be connected that directly. So it was quite interesting for me to research and explore how that might actually have some effect on human rights and how we could connect the two. So I think it was overall very interesting and very nice to hear what arguments the other team had for contra. They were quite different from the ones we had prepared, so that was fun.
Nice, thank you for the feedback. From University of Zambia, Mr. Musonda, how was the debate and match for you?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, it was a very lively and engaging debate. Yeah, and I always say this: the importance of the goodness of preparing both sides is that you anticipate certain points that will come your way, and it also gives you a mind for you to counteract those points. And I must also mention that arguing against human rights really is always difficult. Yeah, so we had to try to find a way in which we can oppose the motion, but while supporting human rights. That's why we tried to give a distinction between human rights and the fundamental right. Yeah, but all in all, so it was a very good week.
All right. Well, thank you to both teams also for the feedback. I would just now like to ask one of our judges, Professor NED, if it's already possible to give a bit of spoiler or maybe just short feedback to the two teams after the debate.
No, I would like to first of all congratulate both teams. I think they did a very compelling job. They were clear in their arguments. The arguments were very well structured. I missed a little bit of more sort of positive written law to be included in the citations, to be included in the arguments, but in general terms, I think both teams did a very good job, and I'll be glad to share with you my evaluations when it comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Also, thank you for taking the time to join us live. I believe it is quite a time, and also once again, thank you and congratulations to the two teams for concluding your group phase matches. Of course, we'll be entering a short break between the group phase and elimination stage as we collect all the scorecards and provide all the results, with a bit of intermission also for the mid-competition networking event, which will be happening now in April. So mid-April, you can, for all students, there will be an invitation in regards to both the announcement of the results and ability to interact with the teams you have met and the teams that you might have already seen from other groups and their other matches. But perhaps a short networking possibility already now. If you were given the opportunity to welcome the other team in your city, on your campus, perhaps even, what would be the food maybe that you would take them to try out, or maybe an experience to showcase either the campus or the city that you live in? Perhaps starting with the University of Zambia, should the THIULDT team be able to travel to Lusaka, what would be the thing to show them or to get them to try?
Yeah, so Zambia is really a tourism host country. Yes, and we wish that more people abroad would come to Zambia and explore our natural resources. So we have famous Victoria Falls. So that is a place that we think would take our opponents, and Zambia Beach as well. So yeah, some places that natural places, yeah, that host a lot of biodiversity. Yeah.
All right. Perhaps, and the same question to Tilburg University. The final week is already happening in The Hague, and it's possible to attend in person. We also are happy to share some discount links for the KLM or Air France travel, should you be able to take the time. Of course, all participants and judges are welcome to join. So perhaps it's not so unreal that the University of Zambia team might be able to also visit Tilburg. What would be the experience to show or the food to try out if they do?
So for Tilburg specifically, I think it's not a small town, but it's very agrarial. So there's a lot of nature surrounding the whole city, and it's very incorporated into it as well. So I think they should probably rent some bikes and go on rides on around the forests which we have here, because they're very well accommodated for biking. And when it comes to food, I think my favorite is we have a food truck at the university with great Surinamese food, and that's quite amazing. So it's not essentially Dutch, but I think they would enjoy it a lot.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll be passing the floor also to my colleague, Professor Larange, to conclude and to wrap up today's debate.
Yes, so many thanks. Yes, so it was a very nice last debate for the group phase. So for you, of course, the first match was after the third match due to the change of calendar in your group. But yes, so we hope that at least the two first match help you to finalize indeed your strategy and, of course, your style of argumentation for this format of debate in the group phase. In this group, we should not forget there are two other universities who had as well their match during the last days. So it means the University of Lagos and University of Bologna, and of course there will be a ranking for the group F. The two best teams of your group will be meeting the two best teams of the group E, which is next to your group, and we'll know of course the composition of the match, particularly at this mid-competition event. The mid-competition event is when all the teams will be together. We'll be networking, we'll have as well some activities, and a few days later will come the 8th of finals match, so elimination phase. So who wins the 8th of finals will get to the quarterfinals and subsequently. So yes, so it is the moment in April when we have a break, and this is the time for us to finalize everything, of course, and to prepare as well the final phase of the competition, with as well at the very end the visits of international organizations that we have in The Hague. So voilà. So many thanks as well, Professor Dinat, a judge of this match. We will be providing, of course, a written version of the assessment in the score sheets during the next days. And of course, this will be completed with the two other judges as well, assessing this match. So many thanks to the Tilburg team. Yes, you have a question, Mr. Ristoff. I didn't see your hand.
Yes, I was curious about the results from our group, and because we don't really know what's going on, and I was just curious if they're out and published, so we know what's happened with the other matches and maybe with ours as well, like the third judge, if she's already done by any chance. That's my question.
Not yet. We check every day and night. And I'm curious as well. I would like to know, but I don't know. So actually, the judge. For the match, the last match you got, yes, we got the second one just after you emailed me, but we don't have yet the third judge. We sent a reminder and we told the judge for that match you got that we would need to close, of course, the result of that match as soon as possible. So she's informed. She knew that the match was taking place. We sent 3-4 emails already. So
also, when we have, just to add to my colleague, what he was saying is that if there is a reason that the judge informs us that they are unable to judge the match or review, or if they are informed by their teams, then of course there is a replacement possibility, but once again, the priority goes to the original judge for the debate. But before the group phase is concluded, all scores will be, of course, revealed, and for the other debates that were happening in Group F, the results are always announced through the LinkedIn and through the Facebook profile. But you should also be able to review a certain link, which will be published on the website. So we'll inform you as that is concluded.
Yep. So many thanks, and as well, we saw your first form, Professor Dinat, for another match today. So we saw that you sent it, and of course, for that match that will come as well during the next days. In any case, many thanks for the free match. Yes, thank you. Professor Dinat is in Chile, just for you to know. So he's very far from Europe and from Africa. So yes, many thanks for your time, and of course, wish you a great rest of the day. And we keep in touch. Many thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Thank
you, and
bye-bye.
congratulations to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.